China is carrying out military exercises around Taiwan just days after the territory's new leader was sworn in. Those drills include occupying key areas of the island. Taipei says it has tracked almost 50 fighter jets flying nearby. Joining me now is Shadow Assistant Foreign Minister Claire Chandler, who's been in Taiwan. Thank you for your time. What do you make of this? How threatening is this reaction from China?
Well, Tom, I think this is more of the dangerous and destabilising behaviour that we have seen from the CCP in relation to Taiwan, and for it to be happening in the region so soon after the inauguration of their new president and vice president this week, I think is incredibly concerning and disappointing. But sadly, as we know, this sort of behaviour has been continuing for quite some time around Taiwan, and to an extent we've become accustomed to it. But here in Australia, I do think we need to be looking in a very clear-eyed way at the behaviour of China towards Taiwan.
And look, people are very clear-eyed over in Taiwan, that's for sure, given the resolve there, but equally the determination of China to continually ramp this up. How much do you fear of a genuine conflict in the pretty near term?
Oh, well, I think all of the defence officials in this country certainly and globally have been talking about the fact that there is a progressively increasing risk of conflict in this particular region. And like I say, we in Australia need to be very, very clear-minded and concerned about that. And you're entirely right. In the conversations that I had while I was in Taiwan, both this week and in September last year when I was there on another parliamentary delegation, it is very obvious that this is front of mind for Taiwan, but at the same time, they're getting on with the job of looking after their citizens and prospering as the wonderful island that it is. So yes, look, it would be fair to say
that's the interesting thing. So we've heard what the leaders have said already. What did you pick up from the mood of the people and their determination? Because on the one hand, they always say they're getting on with their everyday life because if they were, if they let this get to them, then they'd be paralysed. You've got to have a strong economy to have a strong defence. But how much determination is there? How much open talk is there of, we know there's a threat, we'll do our best, we're building up to it, and, we won't back down?
It's honestly quite inspirational, Tom. I mean, if you go to Taipei, which is where we were this week, you wouldn't know that it is an area as much at risk of conflict as it is, but for the occasional signs pointing people to bomb shelters if that turns out to eventuate. So yes, the Taiwanese are wonderful people, and they are getting on with things. The majority of the conversations that we had over there this week was about the strong relationship that Australia has with Taiwan, strengthening those trade ties, strengthening those business-to-business ties. So yes, like you say, they're absolutely focused on getting on with it and celebrating the thriving democracy that they are, which was obviously front of mind this week with the inauguration.
Wanted to turn attention to another foreign matter. So the International Criminal Court, a lot of condemnation because in particular they grouped these arrest warrants together, the Israeli leaders with the Hamas leaders, dealing with Israel in isolation. I don't think anyone has any conjecture over Hamas, arrests for war crimes there, but dealing with Israel in isolation. Is it fair enough to be asking questions about the way this war has been fought from what we do know?
Well, I think the real pity, Tom, is that we can't separate out these two issues because of the manner in which the ICC has issued the arrest warrants. And I think we in the opposition have rightly condemned the fact that the ICC prosecutor is attempting to equate the behaviour of Israel in retaliating to terrorist attacks against it as a country back in October last year with the absolutely appalling behaviour of a terrorist organisation in Hamas. So unfortunately, it's not possible to separate out those two issues because of the way that the ICC has gone about its work here.
Well, it's not possible if you're talking about the ICC. What I'm asking you to consider in isolation, in your own view, is how Israel's conducted the war. That's perfectly possible to have that discussion. What is your view? Have they always conducted this war in the best way possible to minimise civilian casualties and impact on the overall population when you think of supplies of food and water?
Well, I think what we have to remember here, Tom, is go back to the 7th of October and remember the fact that Israel had a terrorist attack conducted against it as a nation. And we would expect, as my colleagues have said, that, that in responding to that terrorist attack, that Israel has a right to defend itself. And like I say, I think that that has been lost in the way that the International Criminal Court prosecutor has chosen to conflate these issues with the arrest warrants.
But I'm not talking about the ICC approach. I'm just asking you to consider how the war's been conducted. I'm not questioning the right to respond, nor saying they should be grouped in the same manner, but just the way the war's been conducted. What do you make of that? Are there areas that you've looked at over the time and thought there could have been more of an emphasis on protecting civilians?
Oh, look, I don't think anyone in Australia or around the world looks at any conflict, particularly modern conflict, as it occurs globally now, and thinks that any single actor has behaved as perfectly as they possibly could. Indeed, I think that's a very idealistic position to take, unfortunately, because like you say, in conflict situations, bad things do happen, but what has been lost in the way that the ICC has handled these warrants recently is the fact that, like I say, Israel has a right to defend itself because of what happened in October last year.